On today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast, here are four teams that definitely want to get away.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Locked On NHL podcast, your daily NHL podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and we are your team each and every day. We thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. On today's episode of Locked On NHL, we'll discuss the big news. Quinn Hughes not participating in the Four Nations face-off as a little banged up. So we'll talk about the implications because it turns out Vancouver's pretty darn good with him out on the ice and pretty not with him off it. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about a few teams that are in need of a break. We'll go on the young side in the case of Columbus and Ottawa. We'll also take a look at the Vegas Golden Knights and the Minnesota Wild. My name is Seth Topal, host of Locked On Wild, and joined as always by JD Young of Locked On Sharks. And JD, who'd have thought the Vancouver Canucks substantially better with Quinn Hughes on the ice compared to when he's not. Big news that Hughes is not going to participate in the Four Nations face-off because he's a little banged up.
Yeah, he missed the last couple games before. He's been playing hurt before that. I know he had something on his hand. Like they would show like him without his glove, his hands all wrapped up and everything like that. I know he tried to kind of maybe potentially make it, but chose, I think, team over country in this, and I 100% don't blame him for a Vancouver Canucks team that is fighting for their playoff life. They got a couple wins without him going into the break. They beat a terrible Sharks team in what was a rock fight, 2-1 type of game, and they beat Toronto Saturday night before the Four Nations without him. But if this team wants to do anything, they need Quinn Hughes up to 100%. Like he is what makes that engine go on that team, and especially with all the chaos that has surrounded this team, having a healthy Quinn Hughes do cool stuff. That's when Vancouver's at its best, and Quinn Hughes, fun guy to watch.
Yeah, it turns out kind of important. Courtesy of DH Sports, the Daily Hive. Listen to these numbers. This is how the Vancouver Canucks did last year with Quinn Hughes and without. So goals for percentage with Hughes on the ice, 77.78%.
It's pretty good.
Pretty nice. Pretty nice. Yeah. Shots for, 65.85%. Also pretty darn good.
Pretty good.
Scoring chances for, 65.55%. So you're basically 3 out of every 4 goals.
Yep.
2 out of every 3 shots and scoring chances with Quinn Hughes on the ice.
Yeah. Who would have thought like the guy who won the Norris might be good at hockey? I'm just call it a hot take. But yeah, no, this team is just not the same. Like he is their super. We talk about, for certain teams, like they have that one guy who just puts on the cape, and if it's McDavid or whomever it is, but little tiny Quinn Hughes is the Vancouver's Superman, and especially with JT Miller getting traded out, Elias Pettersson really hasn't lived up to the contract expectations. Hughes just keeps getting better and better, and it's funny talking to a lot of young defensemen, especially smaller defensemen, and Hughes is the dude that they all look up to, and Hughes is like, that's who I want to try to model my game after. And yeah, it's I know some people are probably mad that he's skipping out of Four Nations. I honestly don't think he was healthy enough to play, but like again, you're trying to win a cup, right? That is the ultimate goal of every hockey player, is to try to win a cup. And as cool as the Four Nations is for some people, winning the Four Nations and stuff, and yes, representing your country is a great honor. Hughes is going to have plenty of opportunities to represent his country. If I don't know how many opportunities he's going to have to win a cup, and I don't
Yeah.
know if Vancouver is going to be able to win a cup this year, but when he's there, they have a much better chance of doing so.
Yeah, you want to hear the flip side of those numbers?
Yes, I'm sure they are. I want to say shark-esque, but lay it on me.
They're worse than that. So, again, according to courtesy of the Daily Hive, without Quinn Hughes on the ice, the Vancouver Canucks as a team, goals for 42.8%. So you're talking about basically a 35% drop.
Yep.
Shots for 37.6%. So that's like 28% drop. Scoring chances for is down to 40.6.
Those are sharks-esque. Those are
That's
yeah. You're
not
talking
great.
so Quinn Hughes is the difference between the Vancouver Canucks being the Sharks and then them being like last year, taking Edmonton to Game 7.
Yeah.
Like that is there's reasons why. I mean, I know those are numbers from last year, but there's reasons why Hughes is like a legitimate Hart candidate this year because of just how important he is to his team. That is those, yeah. Like I knew the numbers, but it's still just your brain doesn't comprehend how important he is to this team.
Yeah, and so this is, you're right on. This is 100% the right choice because in the US and in Canada, the Stanley Cup is the goal. The Stanley
Yep.
Cup is always the prize. And you just got to do whatever it takes to be able to make that happen. Um, the squad shows have talked extensively about the Four Nations face off over the last couple of weeks. It ain't the Olympics. Like as much as the NHL wants it to be, at this point, it's not the Olympics.
Yeah.
So it's gonna take third wheel. And I think Hughes made the right choice. Let's be honest. Really the only thing that the only reason that some of these guys consider doing stuff like this is they just want to be out there on the ice with the squad. They just want to be out there on the ice with the
With the
fellas, like
yeah.
just because they don't have any big vacation plans. So they're like, well, I might as well just keep skating.
Yeah, you do wonder, like, with some of these. I mean, I know a lot of these guys are, cream of the crust, like top end players, but you do wonder with maybe some of these younger guys where it's your chance to, like, hey, I'm teammates with, Connor McDavid or whomever. It's my chance to kind of pick their brain for, a week or so and kind of learn
Yeah,
from them. You hear about the NBA all the time, like the Olympics, guys getting to kind of learn from LeBron or learn from Seth or learn from these like the 1%, 0.001% type of guys and learn those little details. You do wonder with that, but I know a lot of these guys also train together in the summer, right? And stuff like that. So it is, I do, a guy like Jake Sanderson, for example, right? Up and coming guy for the Sens who's going to be taking Hughes's spot. And I'm sure this is a great opportunity for him. And he's probably going to be the seventh defenseman. Maybe he plays here or there, but like, this is a great opportunity for him to learn from these super, like, I mean, yes, he has Brady Tkachuk but like the, Austin Matthews and all these other guys who are the very, very, very top of the league, and try to kind of learn from some of these guys and help him develop and to hit that next level that the Sens fans are going to, hoping that he can go. So.
and speaking of the Senators, we're going to talk about them here in a little bit because they may be a team or one of the teams that has said, we're okay with a break. Because there are a couple teams in the East that have been in pretty solid playoff positioning as of the last week, but as of right now, tenuous at best. So we'll talk about a couple of teams that could definitely use the break as we continue today's episode of Locked On NHL after this. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. Like myself, who over the last few months over the summer was looking for a job, and Indeed does such a good job of being able to link my qualifications with jobs that are available, making sure that I don't miss any good fits. All it took was a couple of extensive Indeed searches, and I was right back on the market. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On NHL. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Seth and JD hanging out here as we get set for the start of the Four Nations face-off. More on that coming up in our squad show this week, so make sure to tune in. If you have not seen one of those squad shows, it's a nice, fun vibe with many Locked On NHL hosts, a rotating panel that leads to some intriguing dialogue between hosts. You know, sometimes you get a couple of rival shows on there, and leads to some fun. So make sure to tune in to those on any of your favorite channels on YouTube. All right, couple of teams in the East that could definitely use a break. Let's start with a team that previously occupied the second wildcard spot in the East, JD. Dean Evison and the Columbus Blue Jackets. They have now lost 4 in a row. They are 4-5-1 in their last 10.
Yep.
And now find themselves 1 point behind the Cam Fowler-less Detroit Red Wings.
I know. Cam Fowler not taking a break. That dude is out there still skating 100%. Yeah, Columbus, like, they're dealing with some injuries here. It definitely is. I think we highlighted it last week too. Just some of the guys, you're starting to kind of pull some pieces. A young team who a lot of these guys are kind of going through this type of playoff push for the first time. And I think for them, the break probably couldn't come at fast enough, right? A chance to reset, refocus, get away. I know they have a couple guys. I know Werenski's playing for Team USA, but like for the most part, most of this team is a young team that is going to be able to kind of refresh themselves and be able to hopefully reset mentally, and then hopefully start to get some healthy people back, because I think that's the biggest thing for them is just try to get healthy again for this team, because it is a absolute dogfight in the East for this final 2 playoff spots. And I think Columbus could use some reinforcements right now.
Yeah. You look at these last few games, especially just a weird stretch, because they beat the Kings, who are red hot, 3-2. They then beat the Vegas Golden Knights 2-1. Then beat Utah 3-2, but then a 5-3 loss to Dallas. And that one you can overlook. The Dallas Stars have been pretty consistently good all season.
They're pretty good. Yep.
But then you lose to the Buffalo Sabres, who have been pretty consistently not. That feels like
consistently inconsistent for the Buffalo Sabres. Yes.
Yeah, that feels like one you should have had. Then you lose 3-2 to Utah. You lose 4-3 to the Rangers. So it's points that it's games that it feels like you probably should find a way to win. Now, you could also say that they're all one goal losses, so it comes down to a play here, a play there, and
Yep.
maybe you flip a couple of those. So I think it's just, I think like you said, it's just a matter of getting some key pieces back and just getting a chance like to get away from the rink a little bit. It's a grind, 82 games, especially in a truncated season, like a really compact season with this Four Nations face off. They've played a lot of games and not a lot of time. So just and for the coaches too, like you go through the long grind of a season, the playbook starts to kind of draw itself, like you hallucinate. Did I draw that play, or did that play just pop on the clipboard by itself?
Yep.
I think it's a perfect time for the break for the Blue Jackets to just regroup and say, "Hey, we're still right in this. We just need to get back to playing our brand of hockey and get back in this fight."
Yeah, and especially you look at like guys like Ventilli, right? 20, Kent Johnson, 22, Cole Sillinger, 21. Like a lot of these guys, again, young guys kind of going through this type of grind for the first time. So yeah, I wouldn't be interesting schedule coming out of the break. They play the Blackhawks, they play Dallas, but then they play Detroit on a back to back, like home and homes. And I think that could be a huge set of games there coming out of the break. So
To be honest, I think the Ottawa Senators are probably just happy to get out of Florida.
yes.
Um, their last 3 games have been against either the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Florida Panthers, and they lost the first in that stretch 4-3, but then back-to-back 5-1 losses for the Senators against the Lightning and the Panthers. And the biggest one for the Senators, JD, is the health of Linus Ullmark. And he it was pretty easy to see how he was a player that the Senators quickly tried to lock in
Yep.
after acquiring him. But don't overlook the losses of Josh Norris and now Shane Pinto being day to day. A couple of really key pieces for this Senators team that have helped make them click so far this season.
Yeah, with Allmark though, I mean, he has been dealing with injuries. He did come back before the break, but now he is going to be playing for Team Sweden at the Four Nations. You just hope, fingers crossed. I'm sure every Sens fan, fingers, toes, everything you could potentially cross that he makes it through there healthy. But yeah, I mean, this team is much different team with Linus Allmark in net, and I know they've gotten some play from some young goalies here to kind of keep them in it here. But if this team wants to make a playoff run, their first playoff run in since the Erik Karlsson days, that was 2 teams ago. Like, you need Linus Ullmark. You need him to be the guy that you traded for and that you're hoping to pay long term, like that you want to be kind of the foundation of your goaltending for the next several years. So I remember we talked about this a while ago when he was on a hot stretch as like a guy who's been injury prone. You have to balance we need to ride the horse to get to the playoffs, but you hope you just don't kind of put him into the dirt. So it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of manage this, especially since it's such a tight playoff race with so many teams. We're trying to get to the playoffs, but we still want him ready and available for the playoffs.
Well, and an interesting little contrast between them and the Blue Jackets, because they're under pressure for a different reason, because it's been so long since they've been to the playoffs, and it seems like every season you go in saying, hey,
this is the year.
This is going to be the year that the Senators finally crack that wall.
We used to call it the Reggie Bush. This is the year Reggie Bush breaks out. This is the year Reggie Bush finally breaks out. And the Sens, this is the year the Sens finally. And they've been playing great. They've been getting key contributions from a lot of other guys. They went out, like their goaltending has been their bugaboo for years. They went out and got Allmark. When healthy, Allmark's been a huge, huge asset and a difference maker for them. But again, can they get to the finish and have something left, I guess?
Yeah. And if they, and I think we're all rooting for the Blue Jackets to get one of those wild card spots. But if they don't, considering everything that happened before the season started, nobody's going to fault them for a second. It
No.
just would be the ultimate feel good story for them to overcome that and to find their way into the postseason. But obviously, as many young pieces as they have on that roster, it's push time. February is push time. It just so happens that there's a 2-week break right during the middle of it. So we're going to switch to a couple of veteran teams that are no strangers to the postseason, even though Minnesota has turned first round exits into a cottage industry. Two teams that are no strangers to making the postseason, but two teams that are currently fighting hospital beds tooth and nail to just get through the season with enough bodies healthy. So we'll talk about the Minnesota Wild and the Vegas Golden Knights as we continue today's episode of Locked On NHL after this.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or just want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I always like rooting for Steph Curry to hit threes because there's nothing better in the NBA than when Steph Curry gets hot. So the app makes it super easy to use. And when you win, you also get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com at your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On NHL. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Seth and JD finishing things off by taking a look. We talk about teams like the Ottawa Senators and the Columbus Blue Jackets maybe being new to the playoff push. These next two teams that we'll finish the show with, they're no strangers to making the postseason. They have done so quite a bit over the course of their recent tenures. Let's start with the Vegas Golden Knights, because Vegas, they just continue to find ways to put an elite product out there. But Vegas has they have been in the weeds for a bit. Over a long stretch of games. Like, you can pinpoint this all the way back to January 7th. Like, it was just a ho-hum 4-2 win over the San Jose Sharks. But ever since the January 7th win against the San Jose Sharks, the Vegas Golden Knights have 5 wins in that span. So you're talking a month and just 5 wins. And they've had close losses during that stretch, but they've also had some games that it feels like they should have easily been able to put away. I mean, St. Louis has been just a weird team. They're like, we got our coach of the future, but we're also offloading assets like crazy. But we're going to get Cam Fowler. You're darn right about that. But so they lose that game in a shootout. You lose 5-3 to Chicago, which is inexcusable.
I enjoyed it as someone who's watching the tank rankings. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Yeah.
Even on a back-to-back, and then you lose to Nashville.
Also enjoyed that.
Who has been arguably the biggest disappointment in the entire NHL this season by far. Vegas definitely could use a little bit of a breather to, I think, just even kind of regroup a little bit.
Yeah.
They know, as a team that has gotten to the Cup final and has won a cup here over the last few years, like they know when the switch needs to be flipped. But
Yeah.
sometimes it takes just a little bit of a regroup to like, okay, guys, it's go time. Let's gear this thing up and let's get back on track.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Vegas is a team that I'm not. You can't doubt them until they lose and like get in stunning fashion. You just assume they're going to be there, and yeah, they're a team that normally this time of year, some guys happen to take vacations through some sort of shenanigans or another, but not so much this year. I know they've been dealing with a little bit of injuries. A guy like William Karlsson, who's a big kind of third line piece for them, who adds a lot of depth and a lot of empty netters apparently. But like I. I think they're a team that's going to benefit, especially because they're such a veteran team, right? And I know they do have a bunch of guys who are playing Four Nations, a bunch of important guys like Mark Stone and Jack Eichel playing Four Nations. But I think for the rest of these guys, like just taking a breath, getting healthy, and trying to make a stretch run here. And their schedule coming out of the rest of the season, they have the 25th easiest schedule. Like their schedule, or 25th hardest schedule. Their schedule is easy. Like coming out of, they have a bunch of games against like Chicago. They have 4 games between Chicago and Nashville that they play. Like they have a bunch of easy games on the schedule here where they'll be able to kind of stack some points. So I'm not too worried about them, especially if Eichel and Stone can get out Four Nations healthy. But I think for them, a nice regroup is kind of what they need.
They also get the Pittsburgh Los Angeles Kings Oreo from March 7th to March 11th. So that's fun. I love when they do a home, another team, and then a home against the previous team. Like I love those scheduling quirks. Oh, and they have one like 3 days later against Detroit, Boston, and Detroit.
Yeah.
I just want to talk to whoever put the schedule together. I just want to talk. That's all.
I like the home and home games. I think it's fun. Especially like the Sharks had one against Nashville, and it was like the 2 craziest games of the season where like the Sharks were up 5-1 and they lost that game 7-5, and then like another just insane game between those 2 teams like 2 days later. It was just like I kind of like the home and home like series thing. I wish there was more of them in the NHL, just because again I think it provides a little juice in the middle of the season. So,
But just have the travel day in between.
yeah.
Like the Wild had one, I think, last year where they played the Devils on a Sunday and then a Thursday. Nobody needs that. That's too much time. That's too much time that's elapsed. Like I've forgotten everything that's happened previously in the season by the time that second game rolls around.
I've forgotten half the Sharks roster, and it's been 3 days since they played a game.
I'm like, what are we doing? The team's playing games. Like who's playing? What's happening? The Minnesota Wild.
They're all dead.
A team that has
RIP.
no shortage of injuries.
Yes.
Kirill at various points this year. Kirill Kaprizov, Jonas Brodin, Jared Spurgeon, Jakob Lauko, Philip Gustafsson, Joel Eriksson Ek, Matt Boldy, Brock Faber, Jake Middleton.
Yeah, they're all.
Did I say Kirill Kaprizov yet?
Yeah, you could mention him 3 times, and I don't think it's enough because Kirill Kaprizov is that important. And then Ryan Hartman, who decided to try to do funny things on the ice. Not an injury, but still like a guy that's out of the lineup here for the next 10 games. And I know they're appealing it and stuff, but like whatever. But yeah, I think the Kaprizov one, because it's been such a tease, right? Like where he come, right, guys, we made it through the Kaprizov injury. He's back. Psych. I'll see you guys later. Now it's a surgery. He might be back here soonish. What's the
Yeah.
deal with Kaprizov?
So the timeline is 4 weeks. And I had a ton of people that were like, well, why didn't he just have the surgery to start? Well,
Because you try to rehab first, guys. You
he
try to rehab first.
probably didn't want to have the surgery initially. But then it was like, well, your performance is a little hampered, so let's do the surgery and let's just get him back and get him healthy. Because the thing about this is that the Wild have built up a ton of point equity at the beginning of the season by vaulting
Yep.
up to the top of the standings on December 3rd, to the points that right now they've got 70 points and they're 10 points, they're 7 points clear of Vancouver, but they're 10 points clear of Calgary.
Yes.
And basically at this point, the Wild need, if you're looking at a magic number of say 94, 95, 96 points to make the playoffs, they basically need to play 500 the rest of the season. And I think they're very capable of doing that.
Yeah. They can
So,
grind out games and stuff, but the problem is you look at their division, right? And you have the Winnipeg Jets, who went through a bit of a slump, but seem to have kind of found their game again here, right? And then you have Dallas, who just made a trade last weekend to get Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci, and I know they're dealing with some injuries, but you're expecting those guys to be back for the playoffs. Then you have Colorado, who feels like the boogeyman that nobody wants to mess with because, I'm like, if the goaltending holds up, and I know they traded Rantanen, but like, I don't want to play Makar. I wouldn't want to play Makar and McKinnon because McKinnon is just an absolute psycho who I feel like could just single-handedly drag a team to a victory if he gets any sort of help from the goaltending. And so it feels, you almost like, do you want to slip to the wild card and maybe play a Pacific team or something? Like, I don't know. Yeah, it's a very precarious situation that the Wild are in right now because, I don't want to play any of those teams.
no, I would much rather just give myself 200 paper cuts with
like,
sharp
honestly, if you could pick, Seth, which of the team, like the central teams, do you feel like the Wild have their best shot to beat in a 7-game series? Because I know, as weird as it sounds, I kind of think the Jets, because their playoff performance, and yes, I know they have Connor Hellebuck, and Connor Hellebuck is amazing, and he can single-handedly win you 4 games because he just decides to just be like, I'm only allowing like 3 goals in 4 games. But we've seen the Jets underperform so many times in the playoffs.
And if he were to go pear-shaped, they have there's nothing else.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only problem.
They're deep.
With
they just don't have that star power that you can count on, right? And you look at the other teams, and especially Colorado, who has the star power, and Dallas, they have guys we've seen, I don't know. I know Robertson's a star, maybe not as like high, but they have Wyatt Johnson, we've seen go insane. Like, they have enough guys. It's weird, right? It's weird. You kind of would rather play the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I don't feel crazy saying that because I think it's accurate. Like, that's the team. That's the one of the group that you are like.
You feel like if you match him up, and if Kirill Kaprizov is Kirill Kaprizov, you're like, I got the best player between him and Hellebuck. You feel like you have you can at least match. Like, my star can go toe to toe with your star. And among skaters, right, I have the best skater on the ice with Kaprizov. So anyway,
and this year, this team has been so weird. Like, they are fully capable of walking into a tough road environment this year and winning a game.
Yeah.
And that's the easy way to flip a series in your favor, is to just go steal one on the road. So I have no idea what to expect. Nobody has any idea what to expect, because it's the Stanley Cup playoffs and the points are made up and the rules don't matter. So we'll see. But everybody enjoy the Four Nations face-off if you can find the channel that it's on, or channels. And mostly just like these teams, enjoy the break before the games get going again. In a couple of weeks, we will, of course, keep you up to date on all things NHL, as our entire panel does throughout the week. So make sure to tune in each and every day so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We've got you covered with new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.